Discovered I'm infertile, my wife is pregnant, and I can't stop questioning if it's a medical miracle or a betrayal. My wife and I have been married for 3 years, together for 6, and in all that time, she's always genuinely amazed me. We've never had huge fights, our love languages match up perfectly, and we're both pretty active people, which is probably why our relationship's been so strong for so long. That's what makes this situation so hard for me. Lately, our careers have been going well. She's thriving in marketing, and I work independently as an IT consultant, which means I can set my own hours and be super flexible. Last year, after some conversations and a lot of excitement, we decided it was time to start a family. The plan was that she'd keep her job full-time and I'd scale back to part-time to help out at home. We were both nervous, sure, but also so eager about the idea of having kids. Then, in December, I got diagnosed with azoospermia, a blockage in the pipes, so to speak. So, even though everything felt normal, I wasn't producing any sperm. The silver lining was that it's treatable with surgery, and, after a lot of waiting, we finally got it scheduled for July. In the meantime, our sex life stayed strong. She's always had a high sex drive, and so have I, so we never really took our foot off the pedal, even though we knew pregnancy wasn't supposed to be on the table. But then this week, everything blew up in my head. She missed her period. It seemed impossible. The babies were supposed to be locked up until I had surgery. But she took 3 tests, and every single one lit up positive. I was stunned. Just absolutely frozen, because according to everything the doctors told me, none of this should be happening. And at first, I couldn't bring myself to doubt her. I never had a reason to, ever. She's never been unfaithful, there's never even been a hint of jealousy on my part. I've always fully trusted her. But as soon as I was alone, the doubt started to claw at me. What if she did cheat? Looking back, there are these tiny things, a sort of patchwork of memories I'd never have questioned before, that suddenly felt important. Her job often means she takes clients out for dinners and works weird hours. She's been unusually busy these last few months, but honestly, that's par for the course in her field. But there was that one night she came home smelling completely unlike herself, not one of her usual 2 perfumes. And there was this text I saw, a winky face on her lock screen. At the time, I figured it was from one of her girlfriends, but now? I just don't know. So here I am, twisting myself in knots, desperately not wanting to believe my wife would risk everything we've been building. The family, the future, the love we have, over some stupid fling. But the doctors swear this kind of pregnancy can't happen. Meanwhile, she's absolutely over the moon about the pregnancy, glowing and happy, with not a trace of guilt or worry. When she first told me, her excitement was so real that I could never bring myself to ask about any of my doubts. But now, with her gone at work and me facing hours alone, I'm completely torn up inside. I keep replaying every late night and suspicious moment, every sent and message, no matter how small. I managed to set up a doctor's appointment for Monday to see if there's any real chance the baby could be mine. If it is mine and I accuse her of cheating? God, I'd feel like the world's biggest asshole. But the idea of waiting 3 days, to just sit by while she's celebrating, feels impossible. I don't know if I can keep all this hidden. I can't stop thinking about this. It feels like it's dragging up old emotional scars I thought I'd buried deep, and now they're just swirling around, making me more insecure and uncertain about what to do than I've ever been before. Usually, I'm not like this. I'm the guy who just comes out and says what's on my mind. But now, I don't know how to say anything without sounding like I'm accusing her of the worst. Somehow, I've got to find a way to bring it up without making it seem like I don't trust her, but I honestly have no idea how. Update 1. I can't believe how many people are told they're completely sterile and then somehow end up having kids anyway. This thought kept ringing in my head, making everything so much more complicated. My past really came back to haunt me when this all began. Years ago, an ex cheated on me. It left a scar deeper than I ever expected, and even though I tried to heal by pouring myself into sports and getting into better shape, it never totally faded. It was through soccer, of all things, that I finally crossed paths with the woman who would become my wife. From day one, trust ran deep between us. I believed, for the longest time, that all my old doubts and bruises were gone. Now, though, everything has been shaken. The news that my wife was pregnant came crashing down on the painful spot that had almost healed. I tried to remind myself not to let my past turn what could be a beautiful surprise into a spiral of fear and suspicion. My wife has never given me a real reason to question her loyalty, but suddenly, those old gnawing doubts were back. She often comes home late from work, sometimes going straight to bed, and I found myself unable to let my worries go. Instead of confronting her right away and dumping all my spiraling insecurity on her late at night, I forced myself to wait. One restless night stretched into a tense morning. I got up at dawn, laced up my shoes, and ran until my mind felt clear. By the time I came home, I couldn't keep it in anymore. I made her favorite omelets and told her I needed to talk. Before I could even get into it, she looked at me knowingly and said, "You know I'm not Ashley, right? Ashley, my cheating ex." That hit me right in the gut. I realized how much I'd been carrying around my resentment without ever really talking about it. So, first, I apologized. I told her everything, How I let my fears grow without trusting her with them, when I should have. How I wanted to be happy and celebrate this, instead of living in fear of heartbreak. How much I loved her excitement for the baby, and loved our relationship. I told her how much of an asshole I felt like, for even questioning her in the first place, after everything she's done to prove she's trustworthy. But I just couldn't shake the pain from the past. She thanked me, for telling her, and said she knew how hard this was for me. Then she volunteered, just like that, to get a paternity test right after the baby's born. That should have reassured me, and for a second, it did. But then this strange feeling swept over me. The way she said all of it so calmly, almost without being upset, threw me for a loop. Normally, she would have been mad that I kept it to myself, but she just seemed so composed and agreeable. Something about it all felt off. Even with her promises, I couldn't stop the nagging feeling scratching at the back of my mind. Was I just being paranoid? Or was my gut right this time? I went to see my urologist alone after we discussed maybe checking if I still needed surgery, trying to get some answers for myself. Turns out I have obstructive azoospermia. I'd heard so many stories of people who ended up having kids despite being declared infertile, so I brought it up. My doctor listened, but implied that my case looked pretty definitive. It'd be pretty unlikely for me to father a kid naturally. Instead, he kept steering me toward confirming my wife's pregnancy instead. After that visit, I only felt more lost. Yesterday she stayed out again till past 8:30. When she got home, I suggested we make an appointment to verify the pregnancy. She looked a little blindsided at first before quickly agreeing, said we could do it the next morning. When I asked about her day at work, she brushed it off with something about her boss being overbearing and job stress, but there was a distance to her answers. We didn't fight, we still acted affectionate, but a twist of unease stayed in my gut. I kept wanting to talk, but there was nothing new to say, just the same old cycle, round and round. Work hasn't been much escape. I keep finding myself distracted, checking things and triple-checking everything. We have a joint checking account we touch only for household things or groceries, always after talking first. This morning I logged in and saw she'd moved half, $1,700, into her own account without mentioning it. She's never done anything like that before. Then I peeked at our healthcare portal and noticed she'd scheduled her appointment for the one window on Thursday when I'm tied up on site. We were supposed to go together. At this point, I feel like my mind is spiraling out. I don't know how to bring up my suspicions without having the same conversation repeat, and I can't get the weight off my chest. I'm planning to get a second opinion soon, but the uncertainty is eating me alive. Am I losing it? Or is there something seriously wrong here that I'm only just catching on to? Update 2. I have to admit, I poured a lot of my negativity into the way I was seeing things lately. It's hard not to, especially when things pile up. After stewing over it all night, I finally sat down with my wife when she got home. I laid everything out for her, held nothing back. I told her about the urologist, the confusion with the money, the upcoming appointment, and most importantly, how I couldn't shake my suspicions even with all her reassurances. Too many things just didn't add up for me. She listened quietly and then agreed that, from my vantage point, everything probably did look pretty bad. I appreciated how quickly she apologized. She told me she hadn't realized just how much my last ex's cheating still haunted me. She had noticed how off I'd been heading into the weekend, but she honestly thought we had already resolved it. The problem is, I tend to keep things bottled up. I can seem calm on the outside while my mind is absolutely racing. For her, it felt like we were already communicating, but I just hadn't truly let her in. We decided to wipe the slate clean and start from scratch, going through everything together. The money was my biggest hang-up. It really bothered me that she handled it without talking to me, especially given how anxious I was. She saw where I was coming from. Apparently, prenatal visits are so rigidly structured that you're asked to set up payment plans right away, and she just wanted to make sure we'd keep the appointment without a hitch. She offered, without me even having to ask, to call the office with me the next morning to confirm, or even move the money back if that'd make me feel better. Turns out her card has better rewards anyway, which did make some sense. As we sat there, we researched obstructive azoospermia together. Reading more about it, I realized that it's not an invincible force field. Some guys with it can still conceive, unless there's a complete absence of the vas deferens kpavd. That made things seem a little more possible. We decided we'd go back to the original specialist I saw last year and hopefully get some real clarity. It turned out the appointment she made was literally the only slot they had open for a while, and she'd figured it was best to jump on it rather than wait. I told her I'd taken off work to go too, and she actually seemed relieved I'd be there. Once again, she said everything I needed to hear. She genuinely seemed committed to getting us back on the same page. As we went through everything point by point, I couldn't help but wish I'd believed her a bit more from the start. She's already dealing with so much stress from work and having to miss time later on, but she really did go out of her way to ease my concerns. She even offered to let me look through her phone, no questions asked, if that would help. We checked out the text that had set me off in the first place, and it ended up being just a girlfriend messaging her. I declined to look further, though. I don't want to become that kind of husband. All of this forced me to look inward at how much my past still influences me today. It's wild, thinking back, how the uncertainty over the weekend completely colored my reality. Anxiety can make you question whether anything around you is real. I think the whole trust but verify mindset would have served me better. But instead, I'd gone full on verify with none of the trust. This ordeal has definitely put a strain on our marriage. The silver lining is that I'm starting to feel like we're a team again, working to get past it together. She actually suggested we do a nip as soon as possible, which I thought was a great idea, and she also wants us to try some counseling. I've never been big on therapy, but honestly, it might just be what we both need. For the first time in a while, I'm feeling a little better about all of this. Update 3. Things took a turn I never saw coming. We went to the appointment Thursday morning together, both of us trying to stay optimistic. The ultrasound confirmed what we already knew: she's definitely pregnant, about 7 weeks along. But when the doctor started going over timeline details, something felt off. Based on the measurements and development, conception would have been around mid to late April. I tried to do the math in my head, thinking back to our activities during that time. That's when it hit me. Mid-April was when I had that nasty stomach bug that knocked me out for almost 2 weeks. I was barely functional, let alone intimate with my wife. I remember because it was right after Easter, and I'd missed a big client deadline because of it. We hadn't been together much at all during that window. I didn't say anything at the appointment, but the wheels in my head were spinning. When we got home, I casually brought up how rough April had been for me with being sick. My wife agreed, saying she remembered how worried she'd been about me. But then she mentioned she'd been traveling a lot for work around that time too, something I'd somehow forgotten about. She'd had back-to-back client trips to Denver and Phoenix. That evening, while she was in the shower, I found myself doing something I swore I wouldn't do. I opened her laptop, which she'd left on the kitchen counter. I told myself I was just going to check our shared calendar to verify the dates, but before I knew it, I was looking at her email. Most of it was typical work stuff, but then I saw something that made my blood run cold. An email thread from late April with someone named Marcus, a client, apparently. The messages started professional enough, but the tone gradually shifted. By the end of the chain, he was thanking her for an amazing evening and hoping they could pick up where we left off during her next visit. Her response was brief: "Let's keep things professional moving forward." I felt like I was going to throw up. I quickly closed the laptop and tried to act normal when she came downstairs, but inside I was falling apart. The timeline was adding up in the worst possible way, and now I had what felt like evidence. The next morning, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept replaying that email over and over. Around noon, my wife texted me asking if I wanted to grab lunch together, which we sometimes do when our schedules align. I said yes, hoping maybe being around her would help settle my mind. We met at this little cafe we both love, and for the first 20 minutes, everything felt normal. She was talking about baby names and nursery ideas, genuinely excited. But I couldn't stop staring at her, trying to read her face for any signs of guilt or deception. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Who's Marcus?" I asked, cutting her off mid-sentence about cribs. The change in her expression was immediate. Her face went pale, and for just a second, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then she quickly composed herself and asked why I was asking. I told her about the email. I expected her to be angry that I'd violated her privacy, but instead she just looked tired. Like she'd been carrying around a weight and was almost relieved to put it down. "It's not what you think," she said quietly. "But it's also not nothing." My heart was pounding as she explained. Marcus had been coming on to her during the Denver trip, making comments, touching her arm during dinner, the whole inappropriate client routine. On the last night, he'd convinced her to have drinks at the hotel bar to celebrate closing the deal. She'd had more wine than she should have and ended up back in his room. "We kissed," she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "That's it. Just kissed." But Josh, I felt so guilty afterward, and when he emailed me later trying to set up another meeting, I shut it down completely. I sat there processing this information, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath me. She swore that's all that happened, that she'd never been unfaithful beyond that one stupid, drunk mistake. But the timing. The pregnancy timing. "The baby isn't his," she said firmly, reading my thoughts. "Josh, you have to believe me. I would never." But as she spoke, I noticed something I'd missed before. Her hands were shaking, and she kept avoiding direct eye contact. These were tells I'd learned to recognize from my ex, Ashley, little signs that there was more to the story. The rest of lunch was awkward and tense. We both picked at our food and made small talk, but the elephant in the room was massive. When we parted ways, she hugged me extra tight and whispered that she loved me. I said it back, but the words felt hollow. Now I'm sitting here, supposed to be working, but completely unable to focus. Part of me wants to believe her version, that it was just a kiss, that the baby is mine despite all the medical evidence, suggesting otherwise. But another part of me keeps thinking about that email, about the timing, about how she looked when I first brought up Marcus's name. I've scheduled another appointment with my urologist for next week, and I'm going to push for more definitive answers about my condition. But I'm also starting to think that maybe we need that paternity test sooner rather than later. The nip she mentioned can be done as early as 9 weeks, which would be in about 2 weeks. I love my wife, I want to trust her. But I also can't shake the feeling that I'm still not getting the whole truth. And the worst part is, I don't know if I'm being paranoid because of my past trauma, or if my instincts are finally catching on to something real. Either way, these next 2 weeks are going to be hell. Update 4. I'm writing this from my car outside a coffee shop because I can't bring myself to go home yet. Everything I thought I knew has been turned completely upside down. The past 2 weeks have been absolute torture. My wife has been trying extra hard to be the perfect partner, making my favorite meals, being more affectionate than usual, constantly talking about our future and the baby. But I could see the strain in her eyes. She knew I was watching, analyzing every word and gesture. The tension in our house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Yesterday was supposed to be the day we could finally get some answers with the nip test. We'd scheduled it for first thing in the morning, and I'd barely slept the night before. But when we got to the clinic, they told us there had been a scheduling mix-up and we'd have to wait another week. My wife seemed almost relieved, which only made my suspicions grow stronger. That afternoon, while she was at work, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove to her office building and waited in the parking garage. I told myself I just needed to see her, to gauge how she was acting when she thought I wasn't around. But really, I was hoping to catch her in a lie or see something that would either confirm or dismiss my fears. Around 6 p.m., I saw her walking toward her car with a man I didn't recognize. They were standing close, talking in what looked like serious conversation. Then he touched her arm, the same gesture she described Marcus doing, and she didn't pull away. My heart was racing as I watched them talk for another few minutes before they hugged goodbye. Not a friendly colleague hug, but something longer, more intimate. I followed her home, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice. When she walked through the door, she immediately launched into this story about how her boss had kept her late for an emergency client call. No mention of the man in the parking garage. I couldn't sleep last night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hug, that familiar way he touched her arm. Around 3 a.m., I got up and went to the kitchen for some water. Her phone was charging on the counter, and for the first time in weeks, she'd forgotten to flip it face down. There was a text notification from M with a heart emoji next to the name. The preview read, "Can't stop thinking about yesterday. When can we?" That's when everything clicked. Marcus wasn't just some client from a business trip months ago. He was here, in our city, and they were still in contact. The heart emoji next to his name meant he was saved as something more than a professional contact. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every possibility. Was he the father? Had their relationship been going on longer than she admitted? Was the whole just a kiss story complete bullshit? This morning, she was acting strange, again, jumpy, checking her phone constantly, and when I asked if she wanted to grab breakfast together, she said she had to run errands. She left the house at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, dressed nicer than usual. That's when I made a decision that I know some people will think is wrong, but I had to know. I used Find My Friends to see where she went. For 2 hours, her location showed she was at Riverside Park, the same park where we had our first official date 6 years ago. She wasn't running errands, she was meeting someone. I drove there and parked across the street. Sure enough, there she was on our bench with the same man from yesterday. They were sitting close, holding hands, and at one point, he kissed her forehead. Not her lips, but the gesture was tender, intimate. Like something a boyfriend would do. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching my wife with another man in the place where we fell in love, feeling like my entire world was crumbling. When I saw her check her phone and start to get up, I quickly left and drove around aimlessly for an hour before coming home. She walked in around noon with a shopping bag from Target, talking about how busy the stores were and apologizing for taking so long. She seemed more relaxed than she'd been in weeks, almost glowing. It made me sick. Tonight, she suggested we watch a movie and order pizza, trying to recreate one of our usual Saturday night routines, but all I could think about was her sitting on that bench with him, the way she leaned into his touch, how natural and comfortable they looked together. I excused myself halfway through the movie, saying I didn't feel well, and that's when I decided to drive here to clear my head. I've been sitting in this parking lot for 2 hours now, trying to figure out what to do next. The urologist appointment is Monday. The paternity test is scheduled for Thursday, but honestly, I don't think I need either one anymore. I saw what I saw. My wife is having an affair, probably has been for months, and there's a very real chance this baby isn't mine. The worst part is, I still love her. Despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, the way she's been manipulating me into thinking I was paranoid, I still love the woman I married. But that woman might not exist anymore. I have to go home eventually. I have to look her in the eye and pretend everything is normal while I figure out my next move. Part of me wants to confront her right now, lay all my cards on the table and demand the truth. But another part of me is terrified that once I do, there's no going back. Our marriage will be over, and I'll have to face the reality that the past 3 years have been built on lies. I don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight, knowing she's lying next to me, probably texting him while I'm pretending to be asleep. But I need more concrete proof before I blow up our entire life. If anyone has been through something like this, I could really use some advice on what to do next. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to save myself. Update 5. I never made it home Saturday night. I ended up sleeping in my car in that coffee shop parking lot, waking up with a crick in my neck and 17 missed calls from my wife. Her voicemail started concerned, then worried, then borderline frantic. The last one, left around 2 a.m., just said, "Josh, please come home. I'm scared something happened to you." When I finally walked through the door Sunday morning, she was sitting at the kitchen table still in yesterday's clothes, eyes red from crying. She jumped up and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, asking over and over if I was okay. For a moment, I almost forgot about Marcus, about the park, about everything. This felt like my wife, the woman who used to stay up all night when I had food poisoning, who cried when I surprised her with our dog, who laughed at my terrible dad jokes. But then I remembered her sitting on our bench with him, and the anger came flooding back. I told her I'd been driving around, needed to clear my head, fell asleep in my car. She seemed to buy it, but I could tell she was studying my face, trying to figure out what was really going on. We spent Sunday walking on eggshells around each other. She kept trying to start conversations about the baby, about names, about our future, but I could barely manage one-word responses. Monday's urologist appointment was a disaster. Dr. Patterson ran more tests and confirmed what I already knew: my condition makes natural conception extremely unlikely. When I pressed him about the possibility, he used words like virtually impossible and less than 1% chance. He recommended we move forward with the surgery if we wanted biological children, but his tone made it clear he thought we were wasting time. My wife sat there nodding along, asking all the right questions, playing the part of the concerned spouse perfectly. But I kept watching her hands. They were completely steady. No nervous trembling, no fidgeting. If this news was devastating her because it meant the baby couldn't be mine, she was hiding it remarkably well. That night, she suggested we celebrate getting closer to our answers with dinner at Romano's, the Italian place where we had our first anniversary. I almost laughed at the irony. Here she was, trying to create romantic moments with me while carrying another man's baby. But I played along. I needed to see how far this charade would go. Over dinner, she started talking about converting the spare room into a nursery. She had her phone out, showing me Pinterest boards she'd apparently been working on for weeks. Soft yellow walls, white furniture, a reading corner where I could tell bedtime stories to our child. The way she said "our" made my stomach turn. "What do you think about the name Emma if it's a girl?" she asked, scrolling through her notes app. I nearly choked on my wine. Emma was my sister's name, my sister who died in a car accident when she was 16. My wife knew this. She knew how much that name meant to me, how I'd always said that if we had a daughter, I'd want to honor Emma's memory. Was she really going to name another man's baby after my dead sister? That's perfect, I managed to say, and I saw her face light up with genuine happiness. Either she was a sociopath, or she'd somehow convinced herself this baby was actually mine despite all evidence to the contrary. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. The NIP test was scheduled for 10 a.m., and I'd already decided this would be the end of it. Whatever the results showed, I was done living in this nightmare of uncertainty. But Wednesday night, everything changed again. I was in my home office working late when I heard her phone buzzing repeatedly on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower, and normally I wouldn't even notice, but something made me walk over and look. 7 missed calls from Em in the last 10 minutes. As I stood there staring at her phone, it started ringing again. Without thinking, I answered. "Sarah?" A man's voice, panicked. "Thank God. Listen, we have a problem. Jennifer saw us yesterday at the park. She's asking questions, and I think she's going too." I hung up. My hands were shaking as I set the phone back down exactly where I'd found it. Jennifer was my wife's best friend and coworker. If Jennifer had seen them together and was asking questions, it meant other people were starting to notice their relationship. When my wife came downstairs 20 minutes later, she immediately grabbed her phone and checked her missed calls. I watched her face change as she scrolled through Marcus's messages. She looked terrified. "Everything okay?" I asked casually. "Yeah, just work stuff. You know how it is." But her voice was shaky, and she kept glancing at her phone like it was a bomb about to go off. She excused herself to return a work call and went upstairs. I could hear her voice through the ceiling, not the words, but the tone. Urgent, worried, occasionally raised in what sounded like an argument. When she came back down, she looked like she'd been crying. "Josh," she said, sitting down next to me on the couch. "I need to tell you something." My heart started pounding. This was it. She was finally going to confess. "I've been thinking about everything, your surgery, the baby, our future. And I think..." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "I think we should postpone the paternity test." "What?" That was not what I'd expected her to say. "I mean, what's the point? The baby is yours." "I know it is. And getting the test just feels like we don't trust each other. Like we're letting your past with Ashley poison something beautiful." She reached for my hands, and hers were ice cold despite the warm room. "I want us to focus on being happy about this pregnancy instead of looking for problems that don't exist. Can we do that?" I stared at her, this woman I'd loved for 6 years, who was sitting there begging me not to get a test that would prove the baby's paternity. The same woman who'd been sneaking around with Marcus, meeting him in parks, taking his panicked phone calls. "Of course," I heard myself say. "You're right. We should just focus on our future." The relief that washed over her face was so obvious it was almost insulting. She actually thought I was buying this, but I wasn't canceling anything. Tomorrow morning, while she thought I was at a client meeting, I was going to that clinic. With or without her, I was getting my answers. Because I already knew what they were going to be.